Hello and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be doing a Q&A. It's been, I think, nearly a month since I've done one. Yeah, I've kind of slacked off and these have been moving on to maybe bigger and better things with videos, but as it stands, it's 2 AM. I've just finished moving up into the city where I live for university stuff, so yeah, I don't have anything ready, and I think a Q&A will be pretty fun. And actually, I've got some questions which, in light of what's been going on with patch 6.2, are of a lot more relevance, so it should be kind of cool. Now, just as a side note, if there's any particular stuff about 6.2 that you want to see on the channel, do let me know, and I'll bear that in mind when I'm deciding what to do for videos. So, let's jump on to the questions. So, the first one comes from Lazy Peon, yes, the YouTuber himself, who runs a great channel, which you should absolutely check out. Lots of fun stuff. And he said, over the years, it's obvious Blizzard have put way more development time and work into raiding and PvE content. What do you think WoW would look like today if they'd gone for a more PvP-focused approach to content design rather than PvE? Well, first of all, I think WoW's strength is, I don't think their main strength in terms of the just mechanics of the game is PvP. However, you could argue that if they went in that direction more, well, it would be in a better state at the minute. I think certainly the biggest issue with PvP, well, there's two issues. The first one, at the minute, seems to be class balance from what I've heard from so many people, and the other one is a content issue. They quite simply have not made content for the PvP audience. With Warlords, they tweaked around with game systems and the way, say, Battleground rewards and stuff like that worked, and the only bit of new content was Ashran, and Ashran, from a reward structure, was flawed by design. And guess what? They even admitted that. Halinka said that Ashran did not live up to what they wanted, and it just didn't work out. He said that in a recent Q&A. You can go and listen to it yourself. So, yeah, Ashran just completely failed, in my opinion. And you know what? The one thing that I called out the most about Ashran in beta was the fact that the reward system was absolutely borked. And didn't make a lot of sense in terms of what you really want to be doing with backing up the fantasy of what the player is doing. So, yeah, I just think Warlords of Draenor hasn't really done a great deal for the PvP community, so if they had have put more of a focus onto PvP, we would have had a very different game. I think the PvE focus at the minute's kind of interesting. With PvE content, it's really burned through, and then it's done. Whereas with PvP, there's something about it, the fact that it's not the content, it's not the quest that you're doing that makes it exciting, it's the fact you're fighting another player, and I think that's inherently a lot more sustainable. Just look at Counter-Strike, like, people are still playing maps, or, playing games on Dust 2. All these years later, I'm still playing games in Dust 2, like, 10 years after well, maybe not 10 years, like 7 or 8 after I first started playing Counter-Strike. PvE is a lot more sustainable in terms of the amount of work that has to be put in, so I would nearly say that they actually wouldn't need to shift that much away from PvE in order to provide more PvP content. They, I think, just need to start bothering to make PvP content. I think one thing that really has got to me a little bit is they haven't really innovated that much with Battlegrounds as of late. And a game that I played for about 2 months, but honestly, I thought it was a good game, but had some issues, was Star Wars The Old Republic, and one of the great things that I enjoyed about that game was Huttball. Now, Huttball was a battleground, essentially a battleground. I don't know what they actually called it in the game, I can't remember, but what you would do in Huttball is it was set in this game show, which A, is a setting that I love. Yeah, it wouldn't work in World of Warcraft, but both teams have got a ball, and the ball's basically kind of a flag carrier, just you can toss the flag to people, and it happens in this arena where there's traps, there's like, pillars of flame and various things like that, and the geometry of the arena is such that it just leads to some really interesting encounters. They haven't really tried to do a great deal with that region of PvP, especially in Battlegrounds, and I think that Battlegrounds would be a lot more fun if they did that. Also arenas, if arenas could have kind of various environmental hazards and things like that, I think it could be a lot more fun. It seems like somewhere during the Burning Crusade or Cataclysm or Wrath or whatever, they just sort of were like, yeah, this is roughly what Battleground is, and then they never really innovated since. Well, I think it's about time they really try to innovate Battlegrounds. Going back to the question, I suppose, as to what I think WoW would look like today if they'd gone on that route, I don't know if it would have done as well as it has. I think it would have had a smaller audience, but perhaps an audience that would have been retained a little bit more. One thing that I've noticed World of Warcraft seems to have done since Mists of Pandaria is it's really churned through players. The subscription numbers have been fluctuating up and down, And I think with PvP, they could probably maintain a smaller MMO that's more sustainable in terms of the amount of content developed to hours played by a player. And yeah, they could probably do that. And of course, if it did have a PvP focus, then that would pervade the class design, the ability design. You'd probably have a better balanced PvP. So it would be better, but I overall do think that Blizzard's strength more lies in making the raids and kind of making that progression. Though certainly what I would like for them to see is to support that PvP community more by providing more queued content, because for the people who actually care about PvP and raiding and stuff like that, they don't give a crap about Ashran or anything like that. No, what they want is, you know, A, balance, but B, maybe if there's some new things in the queue to go and check out. Personally, as someone who doesn't PvP that much, I would love a new battleground to go and explore. I think that stuff could be really cool. Oh, and also I suppose something in the same vein as Wintergrasp, where you have got like a raid or something tied in behind that. I think stuff like that's great. It adds a really, really interesting motivation, and it is one of those times when everyone gets together for something, which I did think sort of brought servers together, and it was a pretty cool experience. Now, moving on to the next question, we've got one from the Godzilla player who said, "What do you think Blizzard will do with abilities when the next expansion comes out? For an example, Warlords of Draenor added perks. They can't possibly keep on adding more and more abilities and buttons to press, but at the same time, you know, dealing with useless abilities, it would be a waste of time." And that is a great question, actually, because with Warlords of Draenor, they did the big slash of abilities. And the reason why I chose this question is because recently in an interview with Brian Holinka, or was a Q&A even, a live Q&A, he said that they are happy with the sort of slash of ability numbers, and in fact, they may do, you know, they may slash a few more, basically, which worries me. I think we're at a good level now. We do not need any more cutting of abilities, because there's a few classes that, quite frankly, feel a bit gutted. Certainly, I would love a Hunter redesign, though, to make a few of our specs feel a little bit more different to each other. But it is a really interesting question. How the hell do you deal with power creep? Because when a new expansion comes out, like, people want a new shiny button of some sort, or, you know, things like that. So I'd say that the Warlords of Draenor perk system was a pretty good idea, because rather than adding new abilities, what they got to do was tweak a few of the older ones, and that helped them achieve different designs from what we had in MoP, but in a way that didn't really contribute to Bloat. It was just passively integrated into what was going on with your game. So I'd say in future, they could probably try to do something like that. Maybe if they were adding in new talents, they could try to have, you know, talents that are more about, like, changing up your past abilities, and things like that. So maybe one talent choice could alter your playstyle into sort of one manner, another talent choice could alter it into another manner, and that could be a sort of a big talent that changes pre-existing things, but doesn't really add to Bloat, in a way. And really, I think Blizzard's main goal internally is to keep the Bloat down, and of course that's probably going to mean cutting some more abilities, which, yeah, as I said, worries me a little bit. It is a very tricky thing to deal with, and I think the best way right now is to provide interesting tweaks to classes, and maybe the odd redesign when they think it makes sense, but you do need to be very careful with heavy-handed redesigns and class changes, because that, quite literally, like, is one of the reasons why people quit World of Warcraft. Blizzard have said in the past that when they take up all the information from, basically when you leave the game, they kind of ask you what motivated that decision. One of the most common things is keeping up with changes to the game and your class. So it's really something they need to watch out for. In the next expansion, I would expect them to do some stuff with talents, but for an example, say the Warlords of Draenor perks, I think they were more a product of Blizzard wanting to change past abilities in a way that sort of was, you know, with the perk system. So it was a progression, and it felt like something that was new and shiny to the expansion. They wanted to do that to change up the old abilities, but I don't think they necessarily would keep something like that going with every expansion. I'd say the perk idea is more one that they would implement if they were doing sort of big class changes and then wanted to sort of smooth classes into where they wanted them to be. I think perks were a pretty good idea, though, and I am glad they cut the number of perks from one every level to one every 2 levels, because I don't think any bloat there would have done the game much good. So certainly next expansion, I'd say we maybe will get, like, we might get a perk or two to smooth out their designs if they want to change things. I'd say Hunters will probably get a pretty big look at, and in terms of dealing with more buttons, well, we'll get new talents. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion. But I suspect that they're going to be talents which are a little bit more about either adding just one single awesome button that's, you know, not a very... I suppose just one that doesn't contribute to bloat that much, or, you know, making really interesting passive alterations to your gameplay that actually affect your rotation and stuff like that. It's odd, you know, it is definitely a problem that's more faced by a game which is as old as World of Warcraft is, that's got so much historical bloat, and now that they have cut that down with Warlords, I really would have hoped that they would have used that leeway to make some really awesome stuff, rather than do what Brian Holinka sort of said and maybe consider cutting more stuff. Honestly, if they cut more abilities, I would only be okay with that if it was in favor of new shiny abilities that are really good. Rather than just cutting and not really replacing that with too much, because I do feel like, I mean, every class that I have, I've got like 7 level 100s. I can play all of their DPS specs pretty easily, because none of them are that hard. Maybe the harder one would be, say, Dot Weaving and a Shadow Priest, but my Shadow Priest is level 17, so that's not really an issue. Anyway, that's pretty much both the questions answered. Sorry for this not being a 5.2 video or 6.2 video or anything like that. I just needed to get something out there that I thought would be fun. And hopefully the 6.2 stuff will continue, A, when we get a new PTR build, and B, when I completely finish rebuilding my setup, now that I'm back in my my room. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you've got questions, leave them down in the comments. I'll be sure to pick them up. And yeah, I'll see you next time.